and welcome. What did you do? 4 days. Don't tell me you studied. Who went to their native places? Only one guy. So you also. Others? Here. क्या किया यहाँ पे? कुछ नहीं. यहीं पे सब लोग. बहुत सारे तो गायब है अभी भी. फाइन. कॉपी दिखाओ यार जरा. Where did we end? Before questions, street level bureaucracy, we had discussed the managerial and integral approach. Subject matter approach is there to be done. Okay. So what is the idea behind these statements or the presumptions of White, Wilson and Goodnow? They wanted to bring the management perspective into public administration. So okay, we are starting from there. A comparison between Goodnow, Wilson and White. Okay, who is supposed to be more dominant supporter of dichotomy? White and Goodnow both. In fact, Goodnow is the direct supporter of the dichotomy, whereas White is bringing the content. Okay, he is taking the administration closer to the management. Okay, he is not talking about directly a divide between the politics and administration, but he is defining the content of the administration. Okay. But both are the supporters. Wilson, compared to both of them, Wilson is little weak in his argument against or in favor of the dichotomy or against the fusion of the politics and administration. Why? Because Wilson later retreats from his statement, his own statement. So if we say that out of Goodnow and Wilson, who can be considered as the pioneer of dichotomy? Goodnow, not the Wilson. Okay, in fact, the Wilson's phase is called as the analytic politics administration dichotomy, whereas Goodnow's phase is concrete politics administration dichotomy. Why concrete? No, he identified locus and focus. In what sense? Okay. There were certain aspects he talked about. What did he talk about? कुछ तो याद होगा भाई. रावण जल गया, ज्ञान भी जल गया. What were the arguments of Goodnow? He identified certain things. What were those? एक दो तो बताओ, कुछ भी बताओ भाई. He said certain things. What? Then? You just look back in your notebooks. Online students can also look back at their notes and just see what were the arguments of Goodnow. That means you don't revise. If you revise, you don't have to read anything apart from these notes. Whatever be the nature of exam. Okay, your notes will suffice any question that will be asked for next 5 years in this exam, if you do it properly. But you must remember. If you don't understand, remember it. Okay, if you understand, well and good. Okay. What were the arguments? Now can you tell me? State's will is the politics and the execution of the will is the administration. Then second, locus of political system is the elective system, whereas that of the administration is the selective or the recruited system, official system. Okay. So he also draws a distinction between the institutions, that the political institutions are separated from the administrative institutions because one is elected, the other is selected or recruited or an official system. Then third, fine. So, based on the analysis of Wilson, Goodenough and White, okay, we identified the evolution or the emergence of three major approaches. Okay, which was, one was the managerial approach. Why? Because most of them, okay, they tried to study administration from the organizational perspective. Okay, they considered institutional separation of politics and administration. Okay, so managerial approach, integral approach, okay, they were dominant. Okay, obviously dominant was this one. Okay, but later this has to be studied. Why? If this was the dominant approach, most of the theories you will read just after Wilson. Okay, Taylor, Fayol, Gulick, Urwick, most of them were managerial in approach. Okay. They were concerned with the study of the higher management in the organization and not the lower or the middle level. Why? No, why they were concerned with the higher level, study of higher levels? Oh, because they thought that power is centralized at the top. So whatever is going to happen in the organization will be an effect of the cause which is created there. There is no other level in the organization that can create that cause. Okay, so who will make or bring the effects? It will be the highest level. So they studied the role, the structure, power, procedure, rules, regulation, everything at the highest level. And they assume that the entire organization operates from the highest level only. Okay. But this view cannot be considered totally correct. Why? Because organization is not just the aggregate of managerial procedures or managerial actions. Okay, it comprises of various other types of decisions, like, let's say, supervision, clerical functions, okay, lower level functions, operative functions. They are all part of the organization, without which we cannot think of organizations functioning. Okay, and also a major part of that is known as the behavior of the organization is visible not at the highest level, but in reality it is visible at the lowest level. Okay, duly supplemented by the argument of Lipsky, the street level bureaucracy. Okay, what is street level bureaucracy? तुम आगे बैठे हो इसलिए तुम ही बेचारे फंस रहे हो. तुम बताओ भाई. What is, who is the street? Tell me. तुम बताओ भैया. मेरी क्लास में सीरियस होने की जरूरत नहीं है. हाँ, ठीक है, सिंसियर होने की जरूरत है. Correct. But what is that concept? What is the meaning? When we say street level bureaucracy, हाँ भाई कोई gender discrimination नहीं है यहाँ पे. हाँ, बताओ. So, but what is the benefit of that conception? The decisions are also taken at the lower level. So you see how drastically the conception that, okay, administration is only managerial in nature, or it is only the highest level which are the major decision maker, that changes after the street level bureaucracy comes into picture. The major impact on the citizen administration relationship is made by the street level bureaucrat rather than the one who is actually managing the organization. Okay, that means what? The day-to-day decisions are also important factor in determining the success of the organization. Okay, that is the benefit of street level bureaucracy. What is subject matter? Okay, let us come to the subject matter approach. Okay, now this approach is, you can say, counter to both these approaches. In fact, you can say it integrates both the approaches. Okay, it integrates both. Okay, because see, subject matter is what? Subject matter means the area of operation, the specific sector in which an organization is functioning. Okay, if we take this view, that means what? All the organizations will look to be similar. Why? All of them, we study the role of the CEO or the head or the GM or the director or whatever. We study them only, and we assume that all the organizations more or less will function similarly because the role or the responsibilities of the highest level is more or less similar. Most of the organizations, they have the similar kind of role, that is the post-COB role. You remember post-COB? Okay. So, this does not give us much about different shades of the organization, different hues, okay, or different aspects of the organization cannot be understood by this. Okay, integral approach also more or less differentiate between various functions at the organization level. But what about the content? That means what? What is the purpose of the organization? The purpose will be different. Health organization will be different from military organization. Even though structurally they may be similar. Okay. Will they be similar structurally? Maybe. Behaviorally? No. Functionally? No. Okay. So what will separate a health organization from an army organization? Okay. It will be its specific behavior and the area of operation. And as the function will change, the behavior will also change. Okay. The kind of function police has to do, specifically visible in the behavior of the policeman. The kind of function a social or an NGO has to do, visible in the behaviors of the people who are part of that organization. Are you getting? So the subject matter view brings that idea, that it is the context as well as the function or the area of operation in which an organization functions also defines the type of organization. It is not only the functions within the organization, but also the functions performed by the organization. Okay. Every organization has to serve something. So what the organization serves also defines the way organization operates. So through this view, what we can understand, that various organizations would be of different types. They may not be similar in nature. So how to deal with the study of organization? Then we'll have to understand different principles for different types of organization. We cannot universalize one particular or set of principles as similar to all the organization. Impossible. Are you getting this point? So there is a theorist, Lewis Miriam. Okay. She is saying that these two are, okay, that means the managerial approach, the post-COB approach, and the subject matter approach. These are like two blades of the same scissor. Okay. So she is saying the scissor cannot operate without either of the blades. That means what? It is important to know what is the area of operation of the organization and also what are the internal aspects of the organization, without which we cannot understand the totality of the organization. Are you getting this point or not? So along with the study of the internal structure of organization, what should we study? The function that the organization performs in the society. Not necessarily internally. Internally, many organizations may be performing similar kind of functions: technical, commercial, managerial, advertising, accounting, financial, similar functions. Okay. But what it serves in the society is equally important to understand the nature of organization. So organizational theory should incorporate what? The subject matter view also. Okay, right. Lewis Miriam. Okay. Okay. The managerial view, or the managerial and the subject matter view, are like two blades of the same scissor. are like two blades of the same scissor. One cannot understand the totality of the organization. One cannot understand the totality of the organization without the either. In fact, this view has been endorsed. This view has been endorsed by various progressive thinkers of the organization, including the famous Mary Parker Follett. Okay, you'll study her later. Okay. So she is of the view that subject matter. Why? Because situations, she is talking about situation. As situation changes, the organization's response changes. That means what? What is an organization in one situation, it is not the same organization in another situation. Okay, that we'll study later. Okay, but she has also endorsed. So this view can be considered to be a holistic view. This was also a consequence or a contradiction of these two views. Okay. So today when we are studying public administration or organizations, we are studying from this view. Earlier most of the approaches were outcome of this view. Okay. You write one more line. Okay. The subject matter view increases the understanding of organization, by linking its role to the society. Different forms of organizations may be required. Different forms of organization may be required to serve different natures of functions. Different nature of functions. For example, the structure of a public organization, and a private organization would be similar. But their role, scope, behavior, contribution, and functional specification may be very different. So, the earlier theorist or the traditional theorist who said organizations are organizations irrespective of the area of operation, that is not correct. In fact, that was the traditional view. Okay, but today we don't accept it. Okay. So Wilson, Goodnow and White also gave a statement the study of public administration or administration must start with the base of management rather than foundation of law. What is the meaning of that? Business, Wilson. Implementation, Goodnow. Okay, management, White. All are talking about the same thing. What is the same thing? They are more concerned with the technicalities. They are not concerned with the normative aspect. Normative aspect means the values. What ought to be is not their concern. Kya hona chahiye? No. No idealisms in administration. Okay, there is no scope of the study of idealisms and values. Okay. So will the administration study culture, society, historical perspectives? Will it study? No, it should study. But according to their definition, it will not study. Okay. So Wilson was criticized for what? Okay, let us criticize Wilson and then move on to the evolution paradigm. Okay. How can we criticize Wilson? On what grounds? It is important. Critique of Wilson. What is the difference between criticism and critique?
So, criticism can be entirely irrational based on prejudices, but critique is somewhat more rational.
Correct. Somewhere similar. Critique is like a discourse. What is a discourse? But discussion is not without argument. Okay, so arguments, counter arguments. Discourse leads to a theory. Discourse leads to knowledge. Whereas discussion may lead to nothing. Again, there is a difference between discourse. But discussion between Nehru and Gandhi would be different from you and your wife. Will it be or not? Okay. So here it will be more concerned with the bartan, the kapda, this and this gift and this. So what a discourse will lead to some meaningful knowledge. So critique is an outcome of discourse. So we are using the term critique means that our evaluation of Wilson or our criticism of Wilson, even though it may be a criticism, is not without any substantive evaluation. Okay. It is not merely a criticism or a negation of what Wilson said. It is a rational evaluation of what Wilson said and what he meant and probably what things he could not say. Okay. Things which he should have taken into consideration, but probably he did not. Okay. So one of the first criticism is the obvious criticism. What was that? How can you criticize? You tell me. If you want to criticize him, what will be your biggest criticism? You must always write chronologically even in the exam. If you write the most important vital point in the end, then by the time examiner reads your answer, he loses the interest. Okay, so the first criticism or first thing that you write must be the most vital aspect. What is it? Okay. So correct. In one line, how will you say? What was the biggest criticism? But that was for the good of administration.
The idea of dichotomy is flawed. Because they don't exist in separate.
He initiated but never defined it. You're correct. Dichotomy सबसे बड़ा criticism. But क्या है? Criticism क्या है उसके पीछे? What is wrong with the dichotomy? Nothing. Okay. But you have raised an issue without any argument. You did not provide the theoretical basis of separation. Okay. Your basis of separation was more ideological, even though it was born out of a practical concern that you wanted to shield the administration from the influences of everyday politics, wanted to make it better, okay, reformative in nature, but at least you must have defined institutionally, functionally, operationally how the distribution of the roles and responsibilities will take place. That is not there. So if you are credited with the dichotomy, you are discredited more with the dichotomy than dichotomy made you infamous rather than famous. Is it or not? Okay. So dichotomy, no doubt, is the biggest criticism. So you can write initiated but never defined it. Okay, he was not elaborative in his nature or in his division of the politics and administration. He did not provide the pragmatic principles of separation. Okay. That is okay, the real distribution of what? Distribution of authority, basis of control and accountability. If you are giving autonomy to administration, how will you ensure the control and accountability of administration? How will you do it? At least you must be very clear about it. Okay, because you are talking about the independence or autonomy of administration in a democratic context. Okay. So even though he brings the idea, okay, but he never enforces the role of the democratic institutions, okay, in his analysis. But democratic institutions must be having more political power rather than administrative power. So administration must be controlled by the political institutions. Okay, that was not very clear. He said even though they cannot be separated, it's okay. Okay. So why you are talking about autonomy? If you are talking about autonomy, then how this autonomy will come? And at the same time, autonomy will be commensurate to the accountability. Both should be there. So he did not develop those pragmatic principles. Okay. Secondly, yes, his obsession with science. Okay. So what is the criticism there? Why should we criticize his obsession with science? What is wrong? Anybody who wants to develop a knowledge has to develop a scientific knowledge. And so was he doing the same thing. What is the difference? Values were missing. What is the methodology? Before developing something into science, you must have some concepts. है कि नहीं? चाहिए कुछ तो चाहिए ना, प्लस माइनस डिवीजन ऑपरेटर चाहिए. क्यों? उसके लिए टेक्निक भी चाहिए. How to study, how to develop that science of administration. What will be the empirical research behind it? What will be the procedure which will be followed? So that is not there. Okay. Also, by emphasizing on science, you divide the entire initial study of the field of public administration from the values itself. Okay. So there is something like paradox in the Wilson's conception of science of administration. Why? He wanted to have a science of administration to serve the values of democracy. He wanted to serve the democracy, the public interest. But the values of democracy to be served with a science of administration. But how to do it is missing. A valueless, a neutral administrator, how he can serve the values of the democracy. Okay, you must be sensitive enough to know what are the needs of the democracy. Then only probably your role. अभी हमने subject matter पढ़ा अभी. So a private manager, an engineer working in the government, an engineer working in the private sector. Same qualification, same nature of work maybe. Okay, but what will change? The responsibility, the role, the sensitivity, it will change or not. So more value aspect in the roles or in the functions of the engineer in public sector. Less value aspect in the roles and functions of the engineer in the private sector. You did not deal with that. Okay, okay. Okay. So there is a visible paradox. You write the full line. I am writing just the word. There is a visible paradox in the Wilson's conception of science of administration. Science of administration to serve the values of democracy. To serve the values of democracy. Okay. Within this you write. He did not talk about the scientific methodology or the empirical procedures. He did not talk about the scientific methodology or the empirical procedures. Empirical procedures to be used in developing a science of administration. In developing a science of administration. Next line. How can a value-free administration, serve? How can a value-free administration serve the needs of democracy which require public sensitivity, and normative considerations, which require public sensitivity and normative considerations, like what? Normative considerations on the part of the administrators, equity, justice, vulnerables, poor, or minorities, this. So democracy itself is an outcome of the values. Okay. So by focusing or emphasizing too much on the technical aspect of administration, science of administration, what you did? You divide the administration of the values of the democracy. And now you want me to serve the same values. So you might feel theoretically that it is very much possible, but in reality it is not at all possible. An insensitive bureaucrat, or you can say a mechanized bureaucrat, how will he serve the society, okay, which requires more of sympathetic or empathetic public administrator? So what you did? You emphasized on this science and made the study of administration value free. Okay. Value free administration not desirable in democracy. Now you write this line. The science of administration influenced the search for a value free administrative theory which is not desirable in a democracy. So this includes both the aspect. At the theoretical level also he did not have a framework or a methodology to go for the science of administration, and also at the level of practical aspect the democracy cannot run merely by a value free orientation. It is impossible. He talked about? Right, but what is the framework? You need to have a framework. The comparative, it was not a theoretical development. It was merely a technical tool which he borrowed. Okay. But how the empirical research would be done, what will be the facts of administration, how to find the facts of administration, what will be the facts of administration. Okay. And that to comparative approach is just a reference. Okay. He never made a theoretical model for that comparison. So there also scientific element is missing. So when you are talking about something scientific, then you give something concrete, that how to develop this science, at least a path on which the later theorists can traverse, but they did not know what is the path. Okay, so that is one drawback, because you are a theorist. Okay. So rather than theorist, you are a visionary. You are not a theorist. Okay. So we must accept that Wilson was not a theorist. Are you getting this point? When you are talking about that, okay, yes, we can, fusion can increase the energy resource for the humanity or for the entire planet, then at least I must know what the fusion is, how fusion can be done, where the fusion will be done, okay, what will be the limitations of the fusion. ये पता होना चाहिए. Okay, so merely giving a statement, okay, without providing the practical inputs to that, okay, that is more of a vision than a theory. तो वो ड्रॉबैक है. तो उसमें साइंस है कहाँ? ये तो साइंस की कामना है. It's a desire for science. There is no science. Are you getting? That is why the criticism. Okay, seems more like a vision for science rather than a science of administration. Fine. Third criticism. He retreats later. That is again a criticism. लिखिए. Retreats from the idea of dichotomy. Okay. Around 1893, Wilson accepted that separation of politics and administration is not possible as they are organically linked. Organically linked to each other. Organically linked to each other. What is organic link? Interdependence. Yes. They share a symbiotic relationship. नहीं, organic separation. They share a symbiotic relationship. That is a high level of interdependence. Okay. In fact, this view was later endorsed by various grand scholars of POBAC, grands who were the dominant scholars till now, who are still dominant. Grand scholars of public administration like Waldo, Dahl, I'm writing the names, okay, like Waldo, Dahl, Appleby, Sire, etc. Waldo, Dahl, Appleby, Sire, Riggs, many scholars were there who later endorsed this view. Okay, but you see, in terms of Wilson's own idea, it was the negation of his own idea. Okay. So in his own idea, what he did? He actually contradicted himself. Okay, that is why it is the base of criticism. Otherwise, as a conception, it is the most dominant conception today. Okay, but why we are criticizing or using it as a criticism? Because it was he himself who initiated it and then finally retreats from the idea. Okay. So today there are a number of developments, okay, which have criticized or which are against the dichotomy perspective. Okay. New public administration is one of them. Public policy approach is another. Okay, where we deny that there is a dichotomy. Okay, and organic linkage organic linkage develops into what? A kind of interdependence. And in this interdependence, what happens? It is very difficult to define or delineate the boundary between the politics and the administration. Okay, so we cannot say that this is not the reality, it is the reality, but as far as the Wilson is concerned, he himself denounces his idea. Okay, so that is why we are criticizing it. Okay, otherwise it should not be taken as criticism. Okay, in fact, you can say that was his vision, that he realized that dichotomy may not exist for a long time. Okay, but it created a theoretical, what you can say, revolution. A kind of theoretical revolution had already been initiated because of dichotomy. Fourth criticism क्या है? Comparative perspective. Okay. Even though Wilson is credited with bringing a comparative perspective, credited with bringing a comparative perspective into the study of public administration. Study of public administration, he did not develop any theoretical model for comparison. It was used it was used only like a tool for importing, only like a tool for importing certain principles of administration from European context to American, from European context to American administration, from European context to American. What else is the criticism? Anything else? Did he favor monarchy over democracy? No. But he was of the view that monarchy or management of the society under monarchy is more easy. So did he favor the monarchy? Then what did he favor? So, I mean, can you say that he was somewhere concerned with a strong administrative system rather than a weak administrative system? A strong administrative system means what? A weak bureaucracy or a weak, strong democracy? It can be either way. If you talk about a strong administration, so the strong with respect to what? The political system. Strong with respect to its procedures and techniques, both ways. So by talking about the autonomy of administration and that to making administration as strong as the political system, okay, he missed certain aspects. What was those? Public opinion, okay, and? Okay, right, it's better you write. Okay, thank you. Okay. A strong administration must coexist with strong democracy. Okay, look it. By emphasizing upon an autonomous and powerful administration, by emphasizing upon an autonomous and powerful administration, Wilson missed the constitutional perspective of popular sovereignty, the constitutional perspective of popular sovereignty over administration. In fact, he wanted the administration to be the fourth arm of the state. इसका consequence क्या होता? What would have been the consequence of having? Well, what is the constitutional perspective of any democratic system? The constitutional perspective talks about popular sovereignty. Whereas by emphasizing upon the administrative sovereignty or administrative autonomy at least, he undermined the constitutional value. And what was the constitutional value? The people's control. So even if efficiency is not primary, okay, the popular control will be accepted. Even if efficiency is undermined, the popular control will be accepted. So for a democracy, it is representation which is more important, it is public control which is more important than efficiency. Okay. So uska focus kya tha? Strong administration. But for what? For what? For society. But if the society is not strong, then the administration will become autocratic. So the argument should have been the strong democracy and the strong administration, or strong administration leading to strong democracy. Okay. But that was not the argument he gave. Okay. He was having a prejudice regarding the political system. Okay. So he had a biased viewpoint regarding the political system, because for him the political system comes with lot of frailties, which is not true. That is the power of the democracy. The multitudinous monarch, public opinion, that is the power of the democracy, and that is not a limitation of the democracy. So he undermined those values. Okay, even though we can say that okay, he might have respected the values of democracy, but as far as he is concerned about the study of administration is there, he never, or he felt the political system or the political democratic politics to be a hindrance to the administration. Okay. But howsoever sophisticated machine you will have, you still need to put an intention into that machine, is it or not? So you can borrow the technique of sharpening the knife, but who will govern the knife? There should be somebody much more powerful than the knife. Is it or not? Are you getting this logic? So even if the knife is highly technically specialized instrument, okay, or it is evolved knife, but still there is somebody who must be more evolved than the knife to control the knife. Okay, that perspective is not visible in Wilson. Okay. Next criticism can be the business perspective. Okay. So, talking about a business or making administration more business-like or less unbusiness-like. Okay. What does it indicate? That Wilson was supporter of efficiency. Wilson was supporter of a management-based administration. Wilson was supporter of the private sector practices into public administration. Okay. So Wilson was also obsessed with efficiency, like so many other industrial thinkers. What is the difference between a political thinker and industrial thinker? Certain things must distinguish between these two. Okay, but by emphasizing on business means what? He almost seems to be analogous to the industrial thinkers. Whereas he had to study, or he was talking about the dichotomy in the political context. Okay. But his idea of business, okay, what it did? It shifted the administration towards the management. So you should have been very clear that a private organization is a private organization. A public organization seeking efficiency will be a public organization. And both cannot be similar. Okay. 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 His fascination for a business like administration, his fascination for a business like administration diverted the study of administration towards more management like than more management like than, underline this, than politics like. More management like than politics like. What does it mean? Well, no distinction between the private as well as the public. Okay. He did not distinguish between the private administration Okay. And the public administration. Efficiency is not the goal. Next slide. Efficiency is not the goal. Of public organizations. Public organization. Even though it may be desirable, it is not inevitable. Even though it may be desirable, it may not be inevitable. So various other criticisms can be said, but these are the major criticisms based on his assumptions of science of admission. But in spite of all the criticisms, the Wilson's contribution is phenomenal. At least he created a niche for the study of something called as administration. Nobody would have given the term administration as much respect as given by the Wilson. The kind of glamour he associated with the term administration probably was never dealt before or prior to the Wilson. So administration itself emerged as an area of inquiry or a discipline or a subject to be developed into a discipline. So that contribution of Wilson cannot be negated. His ethical and moral aspects behind the study of administration, that also cannot be denied. Why? But he wanted reform. He wanted more idealistic administration. He wanted an administration which is free from the partisan politics, an administration which is free from the biasness, which is free from the sectional interests, which is not captured by entrenched groups, elites. यही चाहता था ना वो. तो moral ethical है कि नहीं है? But he wanted a corruption-free administration. Okay, that is why he wanted to depoliticize it. Okay. But don't depoliticize it. Politics and politicking. Is there a difference? Okay. Well, there's a word used, politicking. And this word politics, politics is not a bad word. Politics is associated with power, but politicking is. Politicking, the negative processes or the negative aspects of the politics. You are using power, but you are using power to manipulate. Now politicking. Okay. You are using power to represent. Acceptable. You are using power to influence. Okay. And seek benefits for yourself. Politicking. So all the negative aspects which comes with the politics, that becomes the politicking. Politicking is the, you can say it is like the degradation or the values or degradation of values within the politics is politicking. Okay. So you want to acquire power to serve the society? Good. But you want to acquire power to preserve your control, to preserve or promote the elites, to preserve certain sections, all politicking, bargaining. So bargaining is not bad. Farmer will bargain with the government for subsidies, okay, for loan waivers. Students will bargain from the government for certain benefits and concessions. Women will bargain from the government, nothing bad. But if the bargain is equivalent to horse trading, buying and selling of MLAs and MPs and this and this, now it is political. Use of muscle, money, okay, and other kinds of undesired techniques within the politics, politicking. Okay. So he wanted to protect or depoliticize. That is correct. Nothing wrong. But it was not basically, or it was, there was no need to depoliticize it. It was need to free it from the politicking. So his contribution is immense. Okay, he can be considered as visionary. Okay, because he paved the way for the development or evolution of the discipline of public administration. Okay, So there is a theory or there is a statement by a person known as John Rohr. John Rohr wrote a famous book, Ethics in Bureaucracy, 1930s, late 1930s. Okay, he has given a very famous statement. This you will write as a question. John Rohr is saying, the political theory of constitution can be compared to the constitutional theory of Wilson and Goodenough. Comment. So John Rohr, in his famous book Ethics in Bureaucracy, talks about this particular statement, that is, the political theory of constitution can be compared to the constitutional theory of Wilson and Goodenough. Comment. What does this statement mean? Let us break it. Seems to be complicated, so we'll break it. Simplify. What is the meaning of political theory of constitution? Okay, don't make a reference to the next line, leave it. In itself, what is the meaning of this sentence? Right? This is enough. Behind a constitution. Why? What is the logic of the emergence of constitution? What is that? To control the government? To define the powers of the different organs of the government or the state? Okay. Technically it is to limit the powers. We have discussed before also how constitutionalism was visible within the Wilson's idea. Okay. So the political theory of constitution talks about what? Okay. Having a state, the state is not arbitrary. It will be duly controlled by a framework. This framework will be constitution. What constitution does? It limits. It does not promote. It limits. It is a restriction on the government. Okay. Okay. How does it restrict? So there is a separation of power. Okay. Delineation of functions, judicial supremacy or control of judiciary over the other two organs. Okay. Protecting the public interest and so on. These are what? These are the political theories behind the constitution. So idea of separation of power, idea of distribution of functions and authority between various organs. Okay. The limitations which are imposed by the constitution on the organs. Okay. Organs, in spite of enjoying the authority, are not absolute. Discretionary nature of exercise of power is not possible. That is the idea of constitution or the theoretical premise behind the constitution. So how this aspect can be compared to the constitutional theory of Wilson and Goodenough? What is now their theory? What is their idea? Like? Dichotomy. Okay, yes, correct. Basis of dichotomy. Reasons for dichotomy. Now it is simple. They want to give autonomy to administration, but not absoluteness. The constitutional theory of Goodenough and Wilson is what? That the state will do certain functions. The way to anyway, state is about the expression of the will of the society, and the administration is about the execution of that will. The same thing. That is the constitutional theory of Wilson and Goodenough. So they are identifying that there is a state or there is an executive which is supposed to do functionally this, whereas administration will do this. That means what? That even if the administration is considered to be the fourth arm, or even as a branch of the state or the government, okay, its autonomy does not lead to its arbitrariness. So the idea behind the dichotomy or the autonomy was what? Not to make the administration powerful, but to reduce the arbitrariness which comes as a consequence of the politics or the political influence on the administration. So they were perceiving of an autonomous administration, a strong administration, okay, so that they must not be influenced by the politics. And this strong administration is not an arbitrary administration. It is strong but influenced by public service. It is strong but working for public interest. It is strong but duly controlled by the democratic values. Okay. So as the constitution does not increase the power of the organs, it limits the power of the different organs of the state. The same way the dichotomy is not going to increase the power of the administration within the society. It is only going to improve the performance of the administration and protect it from the politics. Okay. So this protection is not leading to isolation. That should be very clear. Okay. Dichotomy is not the isolation of the politics, of the administration from the popular control. Okay. Because they are accepting, or he is accepting, that multitudinous monarch, that is the public opinion. It is the main driving force behind the decision making in a democracy. And in a democracy, the administration is duly controlled by the political system. Okay. So their logic of this separation, okay, or this dichotomy was not the isolation of administration from the constitutional value system or from the political control. It was only based on the same logic as we have three organs of the state. So the fourth organ of the state which they talk about is basically the logic, or it is the continuation of this logic itself. So there is no inherent contradiction between the political theory of constitution and the administrative theory or constitutional theory of administration by Wilson and Goodenough. Okay. Like people have criticized. That dichotomy will lead to this, dichotomy will lead to this, or dichotomy means or assumes the administrators to be playing a more stronger role, okay, but without any accountability. That is not correct. So their logic was more accountability and more autonomy, not more autonomy and less accountability. Are you understanding this? Will you be able to write? Okay. Though it is comment, we can criticize it also. It's not necessary. Why? Because if we go by various other perspectives, if administration through the principal agent model, or viewing administration purely from an instrumental perspective, then administration must not enjoy co-equal powers with the other three organs of the state, because it is only doing or performing subsidiary function, howsoever important that function may be, but there is no need for the administration to derive direct power from the constitution. It can perform very well by deriving or getting a delegated or subsidiary power from the executive, because we want executive control over administration. So Wilson was more ideal in his statement or in his vision when he thinks about the administration enjoying a co-terminus or a corresponding role with the other three branches and at the same time will be accountable. Impossible. Because it is an official system. Direct popular control impossible, And again, if direct popular control would be there, whatever the vision of Wilson is, it will again be affected. What is the utility? Because see, the other three organs can be controlled. How? Judiciary, let's say, self-control. Okay. But judiciary's role is what? It is limited to conflict resolution and preserving the values of the constitution. It is not playing that active role in the society every day. Okay. Even though today judicial activism might have increased. Okay. But when we perceived theoretical level, the judiciary role comes when? When the other two organs are not working properly. Then the judiciary role will come. Whereas administration is what? Every day it is part and parcel of people's life. So it is very difficult to control. If you isolate the administration from the popular control or popular accountability, then how will you control it? Are you getting this point? In Francophone tradition, it would have been acceptable. But in Anglophone tradition, not acceptable. So a democratic political system requires the administrative or official system to be working under the political institutions, that is the executive and the legislature. So in that regard, it may not be acceptable. It may not be same. Okay. Elected system, there is a mechanism of regular elections. There is a direct, transparent democratic process which controls the political system, whereas there is no such process, equivalent process, which can control the administration. Okay. So they seem to be, or they become more permanent. They develop more stakes in power than compared to the political systems. Are you getting this point? Higher level bureaucracy enjoying enormous powers will create a conflict, will create a parallel power to the political system. Huge conflicts will be there. So the main function of the state, that is the policy making, will suffer. What he wanted was the efficiency in implementation. But when the implementation and formulation would enjoy equal powers, what will happen? Number of conflicts. You cannot segregate them. Okay. Formulation obviously will be a more important activity than implementation. Why? Because formulation is representative in nature. Various communities, various groups, various sections will be visible only in the formulation process. So you can isolate the implementation from the public view, but you cannot isolate the formulation from the public view. Are you understanding? Okay. So this idea may not be totally acceptable also. Okay, but what statement he is giving, he is basically trying to identify, idealize the notion of the dichotomy. The dichotomy was not at the cost of the popular control. Dichotomy was not at the cost of public sovereignty. Dichotomy is not at the cost of the constitutional values. Okay. So you can bring both the views. Okay. Obviously the dominant view is that Wilson always wanted to reform the administration. The context of spoil system and so many things were there. So that was his main motivation. He never wanted to develop administration as a power center parallel to the political system. That was not his intention. Okay. Second question, likhiye.
Would it be right to say that the stand which is needed to be taken depends on the tailword? Because if it is written critically, then only we can.
Oh, that is fine. It is okay. It depends on the tailword, but obviously it is a social science, so we cannot factualize any argument. You cannot absolutely say that Wilson was totally against it or Wilson was totally in favor of it. So obviously it depends upon what dimension of analysis you are choosing. Okay, but in general, we can criticize when we comment. We can take both the aspects, the pros and the cons. So when we will criticize it, what we will criticize? The same things. Okay, and also when you write an answer, there is no need for an extremist view. Okay. Because if you say Wilson was the initiator of dichotomy, then you also have to bring the fact that Wilson was the one who actually denied it. So Wilson initiated dichotomy cannot be an absolute statement. If it is not an absolute statement, then what are the subjective aspects? That also you have to bring. Okay, so no analysis is complete unless you bring all the perspectives. Okay, and all means what? basically one the argument and the other the counter argument, nothing else. Okay, so over analysis is also not required, but yes, if the question is regarding a particular idea, or discuss that idea. Okay, if there is a counter idea acceptable and agreeable, write that also. There is nothing wrong with that. Okay, fine. So write the second question. Thank you. Dichotomy is desirable. Dichotomy is desirable, but not feasible. Dichotomy is desirable but not feasible. Comment. Why it is desirable? Because there are certain benefits. Why it is not feasible? Then you have to bring the context of democracy. Fine. Both the arguments. Okay. So desirable but not feasible. If you have to make it feasible, then how will you do it? Better personnel management practices, increasing the accountability of the administration, okay, improving public control, transparency. Later when you'll add, you'll learn so many other things, then you can increase the scope of this answer. Okay, right now you can talk about, okay, yes, not feasible because this is the process of the democracy. Okay. Desirable, yes, because democracy also comes with number of limitations, drawbacks. Fine. So let us move now. Wilson, let us bury Wilson now. Even though he will keep coming. Okay. But for now we can at least we can say goodbye to Wilson. Okay. So let us come now when the Wilson influenced or initiated the dichotomy, number of theorists started searching for that or those principles of administration. Okay. So this entire evolutionary process starts from, let's say, 1887, goes on till 1940s. In 1940s some new developments take place. The dichotomy dies down as a theory, as a principle you can say, and new perspectives enter into the study of administration. Okay. So this plus 1940s onwards, again you will see number of developments took place. One of the prime reason was the evolution of the science of the social sciences. You understand the term? The evolution of the science of social science. Not theory, but science of social science means the methodologies. Okay, the techniques which the social sciences were borrowing from the natural sciences or the physical sciences. So there was huge growth in their own techniques. Okay, like various techniques they had created. Okay, like if you see, I have already told Durkheim was a person, okay, who brings the concept of social facts. Weber, okay, what they did, they molded the study of the social science according to certain principles of natural sciences. So they brought numerous techniques. Okay, let us say, like for example, there was a person, Bogardus. Okay, Bogardus is basically a sociologist. So Bogardus wanted to study how, at the social level, how the racial discrimination, how the religious discrimination translates into certain consequences. Okay. That means how the communities are isolated in the society, what impact of isolation, what are the factors behind the isolation. So he developed a scale. It became very famous, known as the Bogardus scale. Okay. Or you can say it was Bogardus social distance scale. So he started measuring the social distance, quantifying the level of repulsion the communities have against each other based on race, religion, and something, nationality, and something. Okay, for example, if I want to quantify that what is the level of exploitation socially and culturally, or the level of isolation or repression socially and culturally certain communities faced in India because of the caste system. So I may say that there was exploitation, but I cannot quantify the exploitation. So he wanted to quantify that. Okay. Likert. There was another theorist who is used in PubMed also, Francis Likert. Again, he created a social distance scale known as Likert's scale. Okay. Then they used various other methods. Okay. One is known as participant observation, non-participant observation. Okay. What is participant observation? Okay. When you are part of the research. Okay. Like a sting operation is a participant observation process. Okay. When you are doing the sting, you are initiating the sting. So you are creating a desirable kind of consequence you want. Okay. So you participate in the experiment and then collect the data. Non-participant observation, you do not participate, you observe. Like you put a CCTV and watch it somewhere sitting. Okay, that is a non-participant observation. Okay. Likewise, various clinical psychology, influence of psychological studies, okay, various factors they tried to study within the organization. So it all influenced the phase from 1940s to 1970s. Okay. Then 1970s onwards, more sophisticated technology enters. Okay, slowly and slowly, new models, okay, different facets of administration studied. So 70s to 90s dominated certain unique aspects of public administration. Okay, administration emerged itself as a discipline from 70s to 90s, accepted as a discipline itself. So it developed its own principles, techniques, theories, various contributors created the content of public administration. So from 1990s or from 70s to 90s it emerged as a discipline. Then 1990s onwards again underwent some number of changes. People who influenced the study of administration towards the management, some of them retreated from their own idea. Okay. Certain people studied administration into the political domain. Okay. Now you see, one towards the management, one towards the politics. Ultimately, both the elements came out, converged at one place and became the public administration. Okay. But as the knowledge evolves, the dimensions or new dimensions emerge. So from 1990s onwards now, this is the, again, it is the post-modern emergence of PubMed. 1940s to 1990s, you can say it was the modern phase. Okay. 1880s to 1940s was the traditional phase of public administration. So traditional, modern, post-modern. These are three broad classifications. Okay. Now numerous theories, numerous theorists, variety of dimensions explored within this phase. Okay. So this entire evolutionary process of public administration has been described by a person known as Nicholas Henry. Okay. Through his idea of evolution of public administration. Okay. So let us, because Wilson is very much part of this evolution. Okay. But as Wilson was more of a vision than a content or a theory. Okay. So he is technically not considered by him. Okay. Okay, you give a heading, evolution of public administration. The present status. So Nicholas Henry, okay, has very lucidly and in a very descriptive manner, okay, defined the various stages of evolution of public administration. Okay. Okay. Through his through his paradigms of public administration, he traces the evolution of the public administration and its present status. Okay. What is a paradigm? See, status of what? Public administration as a subject. Okay, obviously as an activity it is evolving, but subject is studying it. Okay, so subject is either describing it, what is happening, or subject can also prescribe what should happen. So when you are studying or when you are defining the evolution of public administration, you are basically dealing with the evolution of the subject or the discipline of public administration. Parallelly, it is evolving in the society, practical aspect also changing. Okay. So sometimes we have viewed what has happened in the society and then taken the knowledge from there. Sometimes we have developed the knowledge and then we have implemented it. Are you getting? So there has been a influence. Okay. But whenever we are referring to this evolution of public administration, we essentially mean the theory or the discipline. But as administration is not a purely theoretical approach or theoretical subject. Whatever we see duly contributes to the knowledge which we develop. Are you getting this? So there is what? There is like a influence of the theory and the practice on this evolution. So when he is talking about evolution of public administration, okay, he is basically referring to the discipline, but the discipline is not isolated from the practice. So both have influenced the evolution of public administration. Have you understood this or not? It is the theory as well as the practice, both. Okay. But what is the context here? The context is purely now you cannot say that this is visible in India or in developing countries. Whatever origin, whatever evolution he talks about the discipline or the practical aspects or theoretical aspects, they were basically the influences created or the influences made in the context of the Western countries. So what were theoretical developments there? What were the administrative developments there? What were the political administrative developments? What were the social influences? All what he refers to in this paradigms or the stages of evolution, that essentially means the American, nothing else. Why I am telling this? Because you may get a question which says, what is the status or the evolution of public administration in India? It is not same as the evolution of public administration. Are you getting? So when we say what is the status of evolution of public administration in India, that would mean more the practice of administration. When it says what is the status or evolution of public administration in general, then it may refer to more the discipline, not the status of discipline. So there is a big difference. Same question asked in paper 1 and paper 2. Or same question asked with reference to the Indian administration, the same question asked with reference to the American administration. You do not know. Today neither you have the time and resource to know what has been the administrative developments practically in the America now. Impossible. So you can only trace the theoretical evolution. Whereas when you talk about India, you can bring both. The theoretical evolution, which was obviously inspired by Western countries, and how it influenced or how it is visible in the Indian context. Both you can bring. Okay. So this evolution does not mean the evolution with reference to the developing countries. That should be very clear. Are you understanding this or not? Okay. So you must bear this in mind, that it is not the evolution with respect to our Indian administration. It is only with respect to the theoretical or general administration which is inspired by the American context. Okay. So Nicholas Henry uses or traces the evolution of public administration or the theory or discipline of public administration through his paradigms, or you can say the stages of evolution. What is a paradigm? He uses the concept of paradigms. Okay, paradigm is a specific term which is used with reference to the natural science, with reference to the physical sciences. Okay, paradigm is that stage of development, or that stage in the development process, in the evolution process, okay, which becomes a definite stage, a defining stage. Okay, for example, we say the Gandhi or the Gandhian phase of Indian independence movement. That does not mean there was no Bhagat Singh. Okay, that does not mean there was no Patel. But why do we refer to the phase 1915 to, let's say, 1948 as the Gandhian phase of Indian independence movement? Why? Most dominant. Accepted factually as well as rationally, both ways. So it is not most dominant subjectively, it is most dominant objectively. That means not without a reason it is dominant, and not without a reason it is accepted to be dominant. So when a subject evolves, okay, for a matter any country, a society evolves, there are specific lampposts, there are specific pillars of this evolution, which can be called as the milestones. 1947 was a milestone, 1885 was a milestone, okay, 1915 was a milestone, 1942 was a milestone, 1922 was a milestone. Huh? That means what? How can you define India or India's independence movement through, let's say, some 20, 50, 70, 80 milestones? There might be so many other stray developments, but all can be understood in terms of these milestones. तुम्हारी लाइफ में हर दिन कुछ हो ही रहा है, हर एक मिनट के हिसाब से तो लाइफ डिफाइन नहीं कर सकते, कैन यू? नॉट इवन आवर्स. सो हाउ यू डिफाइन अ पर्टिकुलर डे? थ्रू सम इवेंट्स. दैट event becomes the pole, the center for that particular day, nothing else. Rest all, even though there may be various type of developments which might have taken place, but they don't become definite as far as your definition of a day is concerned. Are you getting? Are you understanding this or not? So there are certain milestones, lampposts, or you can say pillars in the evolution of anything which you visualize. Okay. And that becomes accepted theoretically. That okay, this was the most prominent development, the most rational, logically accepted development or dominant development, and this was particular phase or these particular duration can be defined in terms of those milestones. Finish. That is the logic of a paradigm. So paradigms, you can consider them as milestones. Okay. When you trace the trajectory of development or evolution of public administration as a subject, then you define it through certain milestones, and these milestones are paradigms. Okay. Even though, because we have already discussed that public administration is not a complete science, it is not an absolute natural science, it may never be an absolute natural science, or it may even not be a science, then why we are using the word paradigm? Will it be logical to use the word paradigm here? Or why he would have used this term? Obviously they were inspired. Right? To trace the evolution of a subject, you need to find out some specific events, okay, some specific developments, which can be considered as sine qua non, inevitable, to understand the evolution of that discipline. And also there were people who were inspired by the positivism, by the science of administration. So a science of administration not having any vocabulary of the science, how will it be acceptable? Agony, is it correct or not? It's not. You want to depict yourself as शायर or a poet, so you use some pseudonym, no? Otherwise कोई शायर मानेगा नहीं. ठीक है? ये तुम बोलो मैं केजरीवाल बोल रहा हूं, कोई मानेगा तुम शायर हो? है ना? तो इसलिए तुम्हें कुछ स्पेसिफिक नाम लगाना पड़ेगा. Even though you may not be a shayer of repute, but what, there are certain symbolisms we use. Okay. So same thing is here, that when you are talking about a science of administration or a discipline, okay, a discipline is an evolved form of any knowledge. So you cannot say or talk about a discipline without having any scientific vocabulary. Impossible. Okay. And also by using the term paradigm, you want to define that, okay, whatever theoretical developments were there during that phase, they center around this particular idea. Like if I say, okay, positivism dominated the study of public administration from 1880s to 1940s, then I can say, yes, the 1880s to 1940s, the dominant paradigm or the dominant approach to the study of public was positivism. Even though various scholars would have contributed in various forms, but the main idea or the core idea was positivism. Okay. So he uses the term paradigm, though this term is obviously not his own, neither he is the first one to use the term paradigm. Okay. This term in the social science, or you can say in public administration, was used by person known as Thomas Kuhn, okay, or Thomas Kuhn, whatever you want. So Thomas Kuhn, he was basically, he's also a social scientist. Okay, he's quite dominant theorist in geography also. Okay, political thought, geography, geographical thought, Thomas Kuhn. Okay, so he gives a reference to this term in public administration, okay, which was borrowed by Nicholas Henry. So Thomas Kuhn uses the term the pre-paradigmatic phase of and this reference was made to the 1940s and 50s. So he is referring that this is the pre-paradigmatic phase of the study of public administration or the discipline of public administration. What he meant was that public administration may be moving towards a discipline, may be moving towards a science, a definite body of knowledge, okay, but still it has not achieved it. So he uses a term pre-paradigmatic phase of public administration. Now the reference to this term, okay, was mainly because of the number of developments which happened prior to that. So he is using this phase and saying that yes, public administration is almost going to develop its own paradigms, just like natural sciences. But this is not the phase where we can call that there exists the paradigm of PubAd. PubAd still has lots to do as far as the dominant conceptual developments, independent developments have to take place. So it is saying it is still not a discipline, but it might become a discipline. Okay, so he uses this word pre-paradigmatic phase of the discipline of PubAd. This word borrowed here. So when Nicholas Henry analyzes the study or the evolution of public administration, he identifies certain paradigms and he says that no, yes, or there were definite developments which could be considered as paradigms of PubAd. There were the lampposts or there were the pillars through which the trajectory of public administration evolved. That means if you have to understand PubAd as a discipline, you will have to look at these landmarks, and these landmarks can be considered as paradigms. Are you understanding this much? So what is the meaning of pre-paradigmatic phase? Is public administration today in pre-paradigmatic phase? No. But today is a discipline. It is evolved. Okay. Even though UPSC may not be liking it much, okay, but there is no confusion as to whether public administration is a discipline worth studying or not. It is. Okay. It is still one of the most dominant social sciences, okay, which can define, improve the relationship of the state and the citizens. So today theoretically also as well as practically also it has been considered as one of the most dominant disciplines. There is a curriculum. Many of the universities may not be having postgraduate and graduate courses in PubAd. Okay. That may be not because of its relevance or utility, That may be because of the context of the developing countries we are in. Okay. Because we are still studying for survival. Is it or not? But we are not studying today to become experts, planners, architects. We are working for Naukri. Is it or not? So obviously we will not go and explore the various options which may be available through various academic disciplines. We are not in that phase. Okay. So the logic is that there is huge number of people who study public administration, who study governance, who study public policy, and they are associated with numerous institutions in the world. But that profession has not emerged in these countries. क्यों? क्योंकि यहाँ पे वो social cultural context नहीं है. Secondary as a profession, it has not evolved. Okay. There is no curriculum as of now, and probably there is no requirement also. Okay. Requirement in the sense, politically. Technically there is a huge requirement. But how the politics functions, okay, there is no need for those experts. Okay. Most of the experts are resigning from the Niti Aayog. Most of the experts are unwilling to go to the Niti Aayog. Why? Because any expert body, if it is politicized, if it is controlled by the political elements, nobody would be eager to serve. So that is one drawback in the developing countries, that most of the institutions have not been depoliticized till now. Okay, there is no scope of independent specialist institutions or specialists in the country, or in most of the developing countries. Okay, that is why also we don't have this. Otherwise, today we cannot say that it is not. It does not have its own paradigms. It has. But it has its own landmarks which define the discipline. So this word cannot be taken today. Okay. If you want to say that, okay, why, or to an extent if we accept this term, okay, obviously it will be referring to that PubAd is not equivalent to natural science. Okay. This can be accepted. That PubAd is not equivalent to natural science, so it's okay. We can say that yes, still there are certain things which are still evolving. But as a discipline it has evolved. Okay. Or emerged as a discipline. Fine. So he uses this term, the paradigm from the pre-paradigm phase. Okay. And through this paradigm, or he uses 6 paradigms. Okay. Technically he used only 5, but later one more was added. Okay. So he uses 6 phases, you can say, or 6 paradigms. Though phases and paradigms are not same. Okay. Through 6 paradigms he traces, through 6 dominant conceptual developments, through 6 dominant conceptual landmarks, he traces the evolution of public administration. Okay. So while defining these paradigms, okay, he uses the reference, or you can say the framework of locus and focus. So using the reference or using the variables, you can understand that way. If you understand mathematics, so he is using 2 variables. Okay, like x and y we have. Okay. So through these 2 coordinates, he is tracing the evolution of public administration. So he is using 2 variables of locus, one locus and focus. Now this locus and focus again is a borrowed concept, you know, from mathematics, from science. Okay, but in public administration, this was used by Golumbiewiczki. So Robert Golumbiewiczki used the word locus and focus, okay, when he himself gave a model of the evolution of public administration. Okay. So evolution of public administration, one model was given by Golumbiewiczki, One was given by Nicholas Henry. Nicholas Henry borrows the concept of locus and focus from him, though his model is more comprehensive. Okay, his model came earlier than the Nicholas Henry's. But first we have to understand this, then we can understand this. That is a paradox. If you first understand this, you will not be able to understand this. So you can say they were like parallel developments. He brings the model somewhere in 1950s. Okay. And he brings the model somewhere in 1970s, 80s. Both are important. Okay. They are, in fact, his is more compact. Okay, his is more descriptive in nature. Okay, so it's better to first understand what were the Nicholas Henry's paradigms of public administration, or the evolution of PubEd through the paradigms of Nicholas Henry. Okay. But these two terms were used by him. Okay. Again he borrows it. Okay, these are like variables, you can say, which are quantifying the development of the discipline. Okay, locus is, we have already discussed. What is a locus? Locus is like institutions. Something you can say, like we have discussed the physical institution, location. Okay, physically where it will be visible. Okay. Anything that you do has a locus. Can you give an example? You can locate the things you do somewhere. Library is for studying, but library is used for so many other activities. Huh? You accept it or not? Teacher भी कभी student था. So if you are saying library with a specific reference, what does it mean? Library indicates certain things. So the moment I say, okay, what is the place to store the books where they can be accessed in a more rational manner, then you'll say, okay, it is library. So the books have a locus. What is the locus? The library. Okay. Vegetables have a locus, maybe the refrigerator or the kitchen. So anything that you do, okay, or you will have a locus. That means what? Certain things are defined for certain places. As simple as that. Okay, so commonsensically we may understand that way. Okay, but yes, formally or technically locus is the institutional where can you locate it, where it is happening. Okay, that can be the locus. Whereas focus is the content. Okay, something analytical. What? So if I say simply, you can say the focus relates to the content. Okay. The theory. The locus relates to the practice. So administration, okay, what is the scope of the study of administration? Focus. What does administration look like? Where does the administration take place? Okay, the bureaucracy, the government system. Are you getting this? Okay. So locus relates to institutional where, the focus relates to the analytical what. It is more concerned with the theory, the content. It is more concerned with the practice. Okay, so we will say policy formulation where, so there will be a content of the policy and the way it will be formulated, and there will be always be a place, formally a system where the policy will be made. Okay. So now if I say that, okay, what is the locus of policy formulation? The executive, the legislature, the political part. Okay. What is the locus of implementation? the administrative part. What is the focus of policy? What? Public interest, sectoral policies, various sectors, okay, or various things which the government wants to achieve. So the focus of policy will include all the aspects, what government wants to do and how it wants to do. So in administration, what part of that focus we will study? How? वे फोकस का भी एक पार्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एंड एक पार्ट पॉलिटिकल साइंस. सो व्हाट पार्ट ऑफ द कंटेंट विल बी स्टडीड बाय पॉलिटिकल साइंस? हाउ टू फॉर्मुलेट, वेयर टू फॉर्मुलेट, what will be the aspects of formulation, what goals, how to come to the goals, what will be the agenda. ये पूरा फोकस जो है वो पॉल साइंस में चला जाएगा. अंडरस्टैंडिंग दिस? So locus of policy formulation, political system, and the focus of policy formulation, political science. ये सही है? हैं? सही है ना? ठीक है. Locus of policy implementation, administration, and focus of policy implementation, public administration. हो गया? ठीक है. So logically, what we are going to do? Here we are going to study the policy implementation within the bureaucracy or public administration, and what is the content of that implementation in the focus. Is this clear to you? Clear? Okay. So he uses these two variables and 6 paradigms. Okay. So paradigm 1, you can just make this diagram. Okay, for paradigm 1, I am writing just P1. Okay. Paradigm 1. Paradigm 1, politics, administration, dichotomy, concrete, (1900 to 1926). Paradigm 2, okay, broken into 3 parts. Okay. So paradigm 2, इसको बड़ा बना सकते हैं. First, the principles phase, 1927 to 1937. Principles phase, 1927 to 1937, also known as the orthodoxy or the era of era of orthodoxy or the era of reputational zenith. 27 to 37. And then comes the era of challenge. It is in the same paradigm too. Okay, that is the dominant paradigm. Okay. And this dominant paradigm is again divided into three phases. Okay. Era of challenge, 1937 to 1940s. Okay, era of challenge, 1937 to 1947. Okay, then crisis of identity, 1947 to 1950. Also known as the era of reputational nadir, the lowest point. Okay. Or public administration as an intellectual wasteland. So paradigm 2, okay, technically this is from 1900 to 1926, okay, and this is technically from 1927 to 1950. Okay, divided into three phases. Paradigm 3 and paradigm 4, they are overlapping. Public administration as political science. Okay, PubAd as political science, 1950 to 1970. Also as the phase of politics administration. Can be considered as the phase of convergence of politics and administration. So 1950 to 1970, PubAd as political science, as phase of politics administration convergence. Paradigm 4, overlapping, PubAd as management science, 1956 to 1970. Okay, you can also write here PubAd as public policy. Okay, we'll discuss in detail what does it mean. Nadir. नहीं, हाँ, second ये वाला. No, this one. Both led to this. Crisis, challenge से crisis, ठीक है, ultimately ये era बोला गया. सेम फेज है, इसी फेज को दोनों टर्म से रेफर किया जाता है. यू कैन राइट इट दैट वे. लास्ट वाला ही ले लो, 1947 to 50, इफ यू वांट टू बी वेरी प्रिसाइज. Okay. So PUBAD as public policy phase or public administration convergence. Okay. PA as management science 56 to 70. Paradigm 5, public administration. Search for curricular autonomy. That means for its content. Okay. Or can also be taken as PUBAD as PUBAD. Paradigm 5, public administration in search for a curricular autonomy, that is for its curriculum, for its content, and public administration as PUBAD. Okay, you can take it both, the paradigm 5. Same thing means the same thing, though the term used by Nicholas Henry is this, implied term is this, PUBAD as public administration. So finally public administration as public administration emerges post 1970s, dominant till 1990s. Okay. Paradigm 6, public administration as governance. PUBAD as governance phase. 1990 onwards. But numerous developments have taken place since 1990s. But what we say the dominant phase of PUBAD or the discipline of public administration is the governance. Now within this numerous developments are there. Okay. But how you define the post-1990s public administration, we define it as governance. Okay. Initial public administration, we define it as dichotomy. Okay. Then after that as principles and era of challenge and crisis of identity. Then the third dominant phase is PUBAD as political science, then PUBAD as management science. Okay. Political science also known as the politics administration convergence or public policy phase. Okay. Then public administration as public administration emerges itself as an independent discipline. Okay. Then post 1990s, the discipline has evolved. Okay. But what is the dominant conceptual development? That is known as the governance phase. So till here, the public administration is evolving. Once it evolves here and develops into a discipline, from here what? These are all the various dimensions which have added value to public administration. These have all led to the emergence of public administration. These have all led to the growth of public administration. Are you getting this point? All that led to the emergence, all this have led to the growth, the qualitative development of public administration as a discipline. So till here, it was looking for the discipline or the evolution of the discipline. The development was taking place. It was just evolving. It was not still the PUBAD. So even if I am writing PUBAD as political science, it may not be correct. Because why? Till here it was not PUBAD. It became public administration after this. But if I have to define the content of a subject theoretically, then somewhere, even if it has not evolved, I would say, okay, yes, it was in the process of evolution. Okay. Have you understood this much? What is locus focus? What is a paradigm? Why the use of the term paradigm? Will it be logical to call it a paradigm? Okay. What is pre-paradigm? Why locus and focus? What is locus of political science? What is locus of PUBAD? What is focus of political science? Or what is focus of policy? A part in the political science, a part in the public administration. Locus क्या होगा? Implementation का bureaucracy. Focus क्या होगा? The techniques of implementation. How? Fine. यहाँ तक clear है आपको? Okay. So Nicholas Henry is one of the most dominant theorists, okay, whose paradigms of public administration are considered to be instrumental in the understanding of how public administration emerged as an independent discipline. Even though there are other contributors like Golumbieski, okay, and in general there are so many other contributors. Okay, but these are two dominant models. So we'll read Golumbieski once we are done with Nicholas Henry. Okay, now see what is the logic when we are dealing with these paradigms. Okay. Now this emergence has nothing to do with the distribution of units in your paper 1, but it is tracing the evolution of power till today. So we'll evaluate the entire status of public administration, theoretically as well as practically both. Are you understanding this aspect or not? So when we'll discuss this evolution, there are certain things which are taught by Nicholas Henry and there are certain things which we will integrate into that. Like so many other developments would have taken place, not all included by Nicholas Henry. Nicholas Henry is only talking about the dominant aspect, which is the paradigm. But within that paradigm, there were so many other developments which could not become the paradigm, but nonetheless they were the theoretical developments. So when we will study this paradigm, okay, which will be it will take more than 10 days to study this. Okay, otherwise only half an hour is required. But how we will study, that is a very different approach. So when we will study these paradigms, we will study the entire theoretical and functional or applied aspects of the public administration. So your entire paper 1, except the 30% part, will be covered under this paradigm. Okay. And why it is necessary? Because if you study things in isolation, you will never be able to understand what was the context of this particular thing, why this particular approach developed, what should I study and why should I study this in this. Okay, so we will integrate this entire paper 1 here itself. So you will have the content, you will have the logic, you can conceptually link all the units of paper 1 together. Okay. So it takes time. Okay. Otherwise, in one line, Nicholas Henry, what he said, it's hardly 3 hours discussion. Okay, but that is not our purpose. The paradigm will be like a backbone for the study of the entire paper 1. Okay, so through this backbone now you can trace the entire anatomy and physiology of public administration and it will become very simple for you to understand. Because you know the specific events, the specific circumstances, the specific context, why something emerged. And whatsoever the contributors were there, we will study all of them together. Okay, because this is a natural process of evolution, at least in social sciences. Okay. So you cannot deny or you cannot isolate the study of dichotomy from the emergence of principles. Okay, you cannot isolate the crisis from the emergence of the parallel developments of political science and the management. Are you getting this point? Have you understood this much? Okay, so you are a great guy. It's okay. Fine. So we'll start from here tomorrow. Okay. Tomorrow we may have class till 2:30 also. Okay, in case required, because we'll have to finish one paradigm. It will take time. Okay. Any doubt you have? No doubts.